but I don't think that there was a bigger game than the Ohio State game. And I think the most important thing that we have to consider is how Ryan Day reacted to that win afterward, which was a 40-second tirade about how Ohio State is viewed as soft and something that Lou Holtz said on the Pat McAfee show on Friday. There was a notion, or there is a notion, that Ohio State is soft. I think mostly because of the way that the Michigan games have gone the last 2 years. And Notre Dame, for the most part in that second half, took control of the game, started running it down Ohio State's throat. Ohio State did some weird play calls on 4th and 1 when it seemed like they were afraid to try to just mash the ball down their throats. And at the end of the game, they ended up winning. So what was your perception of Ohio State before this game, and what was your perception now that Ohio State won on the final play of the game?
I think it was interesting. First of all, we talked about this on Thursday, Ari. Shout out to Kyle McCord. I thought, well, if you had to give a percent chance when they took over on that last drive that he was going to be able to take them down to a touchdown, I would have said under 30, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, got that drive done, got the win. Impressive to do that in that situation on that stage. That's huge. But I think in general, it was interesting that Ryan Day sort of singled out. I mean, Lou Holtz is whatever. I don't really care about that. But Ari, that was a mainstream opinion, was it not?
Yeah, well, first, for those who haven't listened, why don't we show the audience what Ryan Day said on national television?
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team, I cannot believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world, and it'll continue to be Ohio against the world. But I'll tell you what, I love those kids, and we got a tough team.
All right, wait till he hears what Bob Stoops said about Texas next week.
Well, I think that there's a lot to unpack here because, first of all, you have a first-year starter who had, one of the best comebacks in Ohio State history, on the road. That's super important. But let's unpack this notion of softness, where it came from and why people think that. Mm-hmm. So, during my 10 years on the beat, Ohio State physically dominated people for the most part. Even when Urban Meyer was the head coach of this program, running the spread and bringing a new offense to Columbus, Ohio, the main tenet during those Carlos Hyde days, those Ezekiel Elliott days, were that even though we're going to spread it out and we're going to have elite level athletes on the outside, that when push comes to shove, you're not going to be able to stop Ohio State from running the football.
And they played bully ball when they wanted to, or when they needed to.
And they won a lot of games running bully ball with their quarterback too, with JT Barrett. Saw a lot of wins with JT Barrett, JT Wright, right left play calls that were just like run the quarterback. It was kind of like Tim Tebow light. They were a very tough team back then. They didn't always win the big game, but they never lost because they got pushed around. So as Ryan Day's offense has begun to flourish at Ohio State, it looks a little bit differently than it did under Urban Meyer because, what he has done as a coach is, obviously recruited the quarterback position exceptionally well. Brian Hartline and the run of receivers that they've brought in is certainly the deepest and best, most impressive recruiting
They've replaced
results.
Alabama as the best at that position right now.
I don't know that any coach in college football in the modern era of recruiting has accumulated talent at their position better or more efficiently than Ryan Day. And I'm assuming, or not Ryan Day, Brian Hartline. And you could go look that up. I mean, he has more top 100 receivers coming into this program than the entire Big Ten has top 100 players at every position combined.
It's a sharp choice that Texas is pushing him, Ari, but you're right.
Well, it's not. go add it up. I guarantee you it's not.
It's definitely, the sustainability of it all.
I think argue. Where the notion of softness came from, Dave, is how this rivalry has shifted with the Michigan game. In both of the last 2 years, Michigan.
I will say, Ari, though, I think if that kick goes a little bit differently against Georgia, that narrative goes away also.
Well,
which
the thing
is stupid, but it's true.
I don't know that I agree with that because Ohio State is being criticized for being unable to beat teams that are built like Michigan, that are more so built like Notre Dame,
but
who
Georgia
want to run the ball. No, I know, but it's just one of these deals where it's like in this game, Ohio State was winning 10-0. They were in complete control. Their defense was playing a great game. And usually when you shut out an opponent at Ohio State for the first half, that means the game is over.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened in this game and happened before in Michigan games is that the other team has, continued to run the football and has done so in an efficient enough way where they take control of the game. And Notre Dame went on 2 double-digit drives play-wise in that third and fourth quarter to take a 14-10 lead. And it did so by running the ball. And there were a lot of Estime runs where he was hit at 3 yards downfield and it ended up down 10. It looked like they were physically starting to tap out. And then the other thing you have is 2 separate scenarios where Ohio State faced 4th down and 1 or 4th and inches. In the second quarter, they threw the ball into the end zone despite having a fullback on the field, and Marvin Harrison was not on there. And it's just like when you're 4th and 1 at Ohio State, the Urban Meyer Ohio State runs it in for a touchdown. And then later on in the game,
even if you get that 4th and 1 to do that, like that play call, if you're Ryan Day and you're that in your feelings about Lou Holtz saying you're soft, buddy, go prove it on that 4th and 1. Don't run an end around with Egbuka. What are we doing?
And that was 0-0 at that time. And then the second one, Dave, was 4th and inches, and Ohio State was down by 4 with, I believe, 8 or 5 to 8 minutes, one of those two in the game. And they ran a weird end around with Emeka Egbuka that got stuffed. And you start to think to yourself, what happened to the Ohio State that won games like this because they were bigger, faster, hungrier, and tougher? And Notre Dame is a very good football team this year. I think you said that they were going to flex this game. And
I've already been hit up by the Ohio State fans.
And it's okay. That's what happens when you're on a podcast. It's really hard to get everything.
There's a first time for everything. I'm learning what it's like to be wrong. It's never happened before. I don't love it.
Yeah. Well, you'll text us 1 by 100 too on Saturday. So
we'll get to the Longhorns. We'll get to the Longhorns.
But Ohio State didn't get those first downs. They didn't attempt to do them in the old Ohio State way. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to lose to Notre Dame in a similar fashion to the way that they lost to Michigan, which has been, controlling the games in the first half or being there in the first half and then getting beaten down until you no longer are able to compete or are equipped to compete physically. And if Ohio State would have lost that game, I think that Ryan Day probably felt like he was on the verge of losing this fan base. Twitter was a really ugly place when it was 14-10. And
usually it's very nice. That's crazy.
Yeah. Ohio State ended up winning the game at the end there. They had a 4th and 1 after all those 2 4th and 1s. They didn't do the right thing in the game. 4th and 1 with 3 seconds left from the 1 yard line. They ran the ball and Notre Dame inexplicably had 10 men on the field, but they scored a 1 yard touchdown run to win the game. So here's the notion now. Ohio State won. They got down to the place that they didn't want to get down to, which is putting it all on Kyle McCord's shoulders to win the game. They go 65 yards in less than 90 seconds. I think he faced a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 9, a 4th and 7, and a 3rd and 19 on that drive, converted all of them. And they won the game by running it up the gut to win. So like that to me is like the weird dichotomy between, did Ohio State show it was tough at the end, or was Michigan watching this game tape in a few weeks licking their chops? Like, how do you think this game will be perceived moving forward?
I mean, softness is not a binary. Can we say that? Like, is this Ohio State team a team that's just going to push everybody around and be, a brick wall on defense? No. But I don't know that, soft was ever sort of a fitting descriptor. I think certainly teams, the Michigan the last couple of years, like you said, I think is a huge part of it. But to me, regardless of the result, Ari, I still, having watched Georgia as much as I did last season, for them to hang in that game and basically be a coin flip away, that to me, I thought that Notre Dame could do some similar things to Michigan, and like you said, they did at times. But I do think, Ari, it does come down to softness is not a binary. So they're not the toughest team in the world, but Ohio State's going to get pushed around by the big boys just doesn't really hold water.
Well, here's the thing that you have to say, and then we'll move on. But the type of game that Ohio State played against Georgia was a throw it around the field, 48 to 45
Yeah,
type
but
of
they're still
game.
Georgia.
So it's
You
not
still gotta win. You still gotta win on the
sure.
line of scrimmage. You gotta protect. You gotta pressure. All that stuff.
I think that the notion of getting pushed around by less talented teams is the concerning part, not whether or not Ohio State is equipped to compete
but
with other
the
teams that are built
the
like
talent
them.
conversation with Michigan is so complicated because the raw numbers say they're less talented and they might have 7 offensive linemen drafted this year. So, like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah, and Notre Dame has a very good offensive line.
Yes,
So,
they do. One of the best in the
thing
country.
that I think Ohio State's probably going to be happy about is that their quarterback grew up overnight. We saw it
Yeah.
happen. JT Tuimoloau made a huge play at the end of the game. And after all of the grab ass that ensued in that game, they won on a 1-yard touchdown run. So, I think Ohio State is in a good position now with 2 weeks to go before they played Penn State to kind of regroup, build with their quarterback position continually. And then they're playing Penn State at home, and we're going to get another one. So,
yeah,
I think that Ryan Day got fired up for the first time in the 5 years he's been a head coach, because I think he understands that you lose the fan base by people calling your program soft. Your fan base loses faith in who you are and what your program is if they believe that. And that's kind of the beginning of how things start to turn. So I thought it was a really big win for Ohio State. I think we're going to find out a lot about what Notre Dame is as we continue to go on into the season. Ohio State's going to be tested by Penn State. They're going to be tested by Michigan, and he'll have plenty of time to prove his toughness. But I thought it was a very good win for Ohio State. And it went from like complete and utter program meltdown to exhale and win and move on.
So silly. Like,
dude, it's not. I'm telling you,
not
it's
wrong,
not.
but you're not wrong, Ari, but it's still stupid. Like, at the end of the day, I came away from this game thinking those are 2 of the 6 best teams in the country. Whereas we don't need to relitigate it, but watching Texas Bama, I was like, these are 2 top 10-ish teams. So, like, this game really impressed me.
You just can't help yourself, can you?
I'm just saying, Ari. But that's what I saw tonight is 2 of the 6 best teams playing football.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think it was a good win for Ohio State. I don't think you know how deep into the depths of the underground things would have gotten had they lost that game.
I know, but I'm just saying
not just lost stupid. That game.
I don't disagree with you, but it's stupid. Like,
losing the game the way that they would have lost it too, which is giving up 2 11 and 13 play drives and watching another running back run through your defense and carry people around like it's a preschool.
You're not wrong, Ari. You're not wrong, but our job is to provide some sense of reality, and a 4-point loss on the road to a playoff-ish caliber team is not something to like start, breaking out the sackcloth and ashes for,
Yeah, I mean, you got to visit Columbus every now and then.
I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened, Ari. I'm saying that when it happened, I'm going to roll my eyes at it because Ohio State would have been fine. Somebody has to lose these games. Somebody has to win these games. Like, is Notre Dame going to break down touchdown Jesus after this game and rebuild it? And we got to redesign it. We got to have it fresher so that the kids can get, more NIL.
But the thing that you have to understand here, Dave, and I'm telling you this, and anybody listening to the show, it's true. Ohio State was probably a made field goal away from winning a national championship last year.
Yes.
And this team's fan base is very lukewarm, if not trending in the wrong direction on their head coach.